My name is Daniel Mercer, and for most of my career, I believed that if you kept your head down, delivered results, and acted professionally, the system would eventually reward you, which is why it took me far too long to realize that my boss had quietly erased me from a $3 million deal and decided I wasn't worth paying anymore. I worked as a senior solutions strategist for a mid-sized tech consulting firm in Denver, the kind of place that loved buzzwords like family and merit-based culture, while quietly operating on favoritism and ego. And for 2 straight years, I had been the primary architect behind a massive logistics optimization proposal for a national retail client that everyone internally referred to as the deal that would change the company. I built the models, ran the simulations, led the client calls, and solved problems that had stumped 2 departments before me, often working late nights and weekends because the timeline was aggressive and failure wasn't an option. My boss, Trevor Lang, barely understood the technical side of the work, but he loved being in the spotlight, so I let him handle the presentations while I handled the substance, believing that credit would sort itself out when the contract was signed. The deal finally closed at just over $3 million in projected revenue, and that was when the silence started. No bonus discussion, no congratulatory email, no acknowledgement in the company-wide announcement that praised Trevor's visionary leadership and relentless effort. At first, I thought it was an oversight, but when payroll came and went without the agreed-upon commission adjustment that had been verbally promised, I reached out to Trevor, who responded 2 days later with a vague message about budget realignment and suggested we circle back next quarter. I waited. Then I followed up. Then I documented. Weeks turned into months, and the tone shifted from dismissive to cold, and eventually Trevor stopped responding altogether, as if ignoring me would make the problem disappear. What he didn't know was that the client, the same retail company he was bragging about, still contacted me directly for clarifications, updates, and technical adjustments because I was the only one who actually understood the system well enough to answer their questions. I never told them about the internal mess, but I also never pretended Trevor had done the work. And slowly, organically, they started asking why my name wasn't anywhere on the contract documentation or executive summaries. The moment everything changed came during a routine quarterly check-in call when the client's COO casually asked, "Daniel, why aren't you listed as the project lead or compensated as one?" And before I could deflect, Trevor jumped in and said Daniel was part of the support team, a lie so bold it stunned the room into silence. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, if you'd like, I can walk through the original proposal drafts and timeline, and shared my screen, showing version histories, email threads, and signed approvals that clearly traced the deal back to me. The call ended abruptly. 2 hours later, I received an email from the client requesting a private follow-up meeting without Trevor present, and in that meeting, I answered their questions honestly, calmly explaining my role, my compensation agreement, and the fact that I had not been paid or credited despite delivering the core value of the project. I wasn't trying to blow anything up. I just told the truth. The client didn't yell or threaten. They thanked me for my transparency and said they had concerns about ethical representation, which is corporate language for this is about to get bad for someone. Within 48 hours, my company's legal team was scrambling because the client had invoked a clause allowing them to pause future payments pending an internal review, effectively freezing revenue tied to the deal. Trevor suddenly found his voice again, calling me repeatedly, texting apologies, offering to make things right, but by then it was out of his hands. HR called me in, the CFO sat in, and I laid everything out. The unpaid salary adjustment, the missing bonus, the erased credit, the documented proof. The investigation that followed revealed Trevor had been systematically downplaying contributors' roles to inflate his own performance metrics, and the client, furious that they had been misled about who was actually responsible for their system, demanded a new project structure or threatened to terminate the contract entirely. Trevor was removed from the account immediately and resigned a week later under mutual agreement, while the company issued a formal apology to both me and the client. I was offered my full back pay, the bonus I had earned, a public correction acknowledging my role, and a promotion that came far too late to fix the damage to my trust. I accepted the compensation but declined the promotion, choosing instead to leave on my own terms after transitioning the project directly with the client, who later hired me as an independent consultant at nearly double my previous salary. Watching the company scramble to rebuild credibility, knowing they could have avoided everything by simply paying and crediting me, was the quietest, most satisfying form of revenge I've ever experienced, because I didn't have to destroy anything. The truth did all the work for me.